Please welcome I-Jen Poo.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Can we give a huge round of applause to the organizers who brought us all together today? What an amazing day. Amazing day. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit of my personal story to get us started. I grew up in an intergenerational household with the grandparents on both sides playing a huge role in my upbringing from the time I was 6 months old. My grandmother taught me my first words, and she also potty trained me, which turned out to be very useful throughout my life. And I grew up watching my grandfather do Tai Chi every morning, and then every evening we watched Wheel of Fortune together. It was our tradition. Some of my very, very best memories. They taught me my values, painted my vision for the future. I can't even imagine who or where I would be without their love, their guidance, and their care. So I was really attuned to their needs as they aged. And my grandfather lived a long life, but eventually lost his vision, which created a whole host of other health issues, and my father couldn't find the right care for him. So we felt like we didn't have a choice, and we had to place him in a nursing home against his wishes. And the facility was actually a nightmare. The lights didn't work, he couldn't eat the food. He shared a room with 6 people, half of whom were screaming in misery most of the day. He passed away after just 3 months in that facility, fearful and alone. And I and my whole family will forever live with the regret that he spent his final days in that way. And we all felt, and still do to some extent, feel completely helpless. My grandmother is still with us. She's just turned 94 last week, and she lives at home with my mother. Yes, 94. She lives at home with my mother and a home care worker named Mrs. Mai. And up until just a few months ago, she was going to church with her friends, getting her hair permed on a regular basis, like so many perms. Having round-the-clock care has meant that she has been able to stay at home with our family. And even as she's become more frail and her dementia has really progressed in the last 6 months, she's still able to be overwhelmed with joy every time she sees my 3-year-old niece, Agnes, who lives just down the street. She's able to live life, have a totally different quality of life from my grandfather. So we learned a few things from this experience. Caregiving, we realized, is an intergenerational experience. Our ability to care for our children and our elders is actually something that affects entire families, all of us across generations. We also feel like life is hard enough. Dealing with dementia, watching your loved one disappear right before your eyes, raising children. It's hard enough emotionally without the financial and practical stress of finding and affording care. Caregiving can be some of the most meaningful experiences of our lives, but it's too often overshadowed by incredible struggle because we don't have adequate systems or infrastructure in place to support our ability to care for one another. My family felt completely alone in this. And we still do feel like we are finding our way in the dark. We didn't have a plan or a way to navigate what would come our way. We didn't know what would come our way. And what we're realizing is that we're living in an entire country that doesn't have a plan. It turns out millions of us are dealing with this feeling completely alone. And we're at the point where we actually can't sustain it any longer. We are actually at a breaking point. The older population in this country is growing at a rate of 10,000 people per day, turning 70 in America. And people are living longer than ever, which is actually a blessing. It should be a blessing if we had the systems in place to support it. Because aging and living longer is living longer, longer to learn, love, teach, connect, support. if we have the right supports in place. Millennials are having babies now at a rate of 4 million babies born per year. On both ends of the generational spectrum, we have a huge increase in the need for care in our families right at the time when we actually have less of it. Because whereas we used to be able to rely on women as our default care infrastructure, we haven't been able to for several decades now. Actually, 71% of women are in the workforce outside the home. So we're paying for care and we're relying on a professional care workforce, but we can't afford it and we haven't invested in care jobs being sustainable jobs. So it turns out the workforce we're counting on to care for our families can't take care of their own doing this work, earning poverty wages. For most of us, the numbers just don't work out. 70% of working people in America make less than $50,000 per year. And the average costs of childcare and elder care combined are at least $50,000 per year. How in the world is that going to work? Whenever I raise this, people always tell me that to address it would be far too costly. But we never look at the cost of not addressing this. On top of what we're already each paying out of pocket, there's a huge impact on the productivity of 40 million working family caregivers in this country and high levels of stress that are driving up costs in our healthcare system and having an impact on our well-being as a country overall. It turns out that our lack of a care infrastructure and support for working families is one of the most powerful drivers of economic inequality and insecurity that no one talks about. The care workforce is trapped in poverty, and it's overwhelmingly women and women of color. Working family caregivers are struggling to afford care. Most of them are women, and now for the first time, we're actually seeing a decline in women's labor force participation because they can't actually afford to work and pay for care. We're all spending huge amounts of our income on care that don't make sense, and people of color even more. We're all struggling in isolation, seeing this as a personal burden to just bear and figure it out when it's actually a really urgent social problem in need of a collective solution. So I have really good news. We've got the answer. Are you ready? Universal family care. We have got the biggest opportunity of generations to revolutionize the way that we care for our families as we work, to support working families across the lifespan to ensure that we have a strong care workforce alongside it. One social insurance fund that everyone contributes to, that everyone can benefit from to help us afford childcare, elder care, support for people with disabilities, and paid family leave. Basically, everything we need to take care of our families while we work. Right? Doesn't that sound amazing? So here's how we think about it. The pillars of universal family care. People want to work. So this is meant to support people working and having families, and it's also meant to support all the people who are working in non-traditional work environments, which is more and more of us every day. Independent contractors, part-time workers, temporary workers, all kinds of independent workers can also contribute and benefit. It's portable and flexible. It allows you to have access to a variety of services in the context that actually suits your needs. It could be during the day, it could be at night, it could be at home in the community, or it could be in a center or an institution. It combines siloed, disparate programs that actually should be more connected because it's the same family who's the user. It elevates care work. It allows us to finally have the resources to make care jobs good jobs for the 21st century. These are jobs that are here to stay. They won't be outsourced, and they won't be automated anytime soon, or at least my colleague Pollock, who's also here, often talks about the fact that they've been trying to build a robot in a lab in Los Angeles to fold a towel for 11 years, and they still haven't been successful. So they won't be automated. These are going to be a huge share of the jobs of the future in America. We know there's going to be an increased need for care, and that's going to continue for decades. So let's make these jobs good jobs that you can take pride in, and one generation can do better than the next. Build with us. Universal family care is a simple, bold solution to an urgent social need in a country that's living and working longer. Care affects us all. Across race, class, generation, every single American family is grappling with this. We all need care. And in this moment in American politics, we also need issues that bring us together, that remind us how we're connected and interdependent. And this cannot be solved alone. We have to do it collectively together. And when we build it, we will unlock so much care and human potential in America. So, consider this your invitation to come and build it with us. Thank you.